My name is Peter Bruninger, and I'm here with Greg Barone from United Home Audio. Greg, how are you?
Good, really good.
We're doing the world premiere of the Super Deck by United Home Audio. And this has been a project, Greg, it's taken about 18 months or so to...
Just to put it together, and then it's been 2 years in total. But yeah, it's been quite a project. But I think we've covered pretty much every aspect of tape playback and addressed each one. And I think we've got something fun here. Everybody's going to enjoy.
Well, we had an outstanding listening session last night to the wee hours of the morning. And viewers, it's got so much image density. There's so much information on tracks that I've heard on master tape copies in my home that this is just, it just seems to be super saturated. I mean, there's just so much information. Yeah. It is, it's profound is what it is. The listening experience, of course, we have an MBL based system here, it's holographic. But there's just so much information in every part of the mix that it just envelops you. It's some of the most fantastic listening I've ever done in my whole career. Yeah.
The thing I've said all along over the many years I've been doing this is there is so much information stored on that 1/4-inch tape. It's just a matter of getting it off. And every time I've been able to make a better sounding deck, I hear more information, just like what you said. Density of the sound stage is just, it has no bounds.
Yeah, right. That's well put.
From the bass all the way up to the high frequencies, and on this system, I'm even using 2 16-inch subs. But did you hear any abnormalities from the subs?
Not at all. Not at all. It's very seamless. Greg's integrated this system, the subs in perfectly with the MBL 101 Mark IIs.
And the combination of that, along with the fact that this thing kicks out bass so solidly and so realistically, that I think in ultimately it makes it much easier for the subwoofers to do their job. But what I want to do is start going through this because it's a system. The idea was to put together a tape playback system that covers every aspect of the process all into one integrated super deck. That was the goal. So for the tape transport, this is a tape transport that I've used for the last 13 years. It's been pretty bulletproof. I've got say about 100 decks all over the world, and once they go out, they don't come back. People have had these things for quite some period of time, have run a lot of tape through them, and they're just kind of bulletproof, basically because they have DC motors, all 3 DC motors. So the goal here was just in the tape transport to move the tape past the tape head. That's it. That's why you can see some changes in the faceplate. We just covered up all the unused switches, the unused VU meters, the whole bit to give it a sleeker look. Also put in this carbon fiber hourglass feature between the 2 reels. What that does is dampen the front panel nicely, plus it looks good too. One of the future things that are coming on the deck, this deck has carbon fiber side rails on it to cover the rack mount ears. So a matching set of faceplates for the outboard head amp and the outboard power supply are also going to be an optional feature. But moving tape is the only thing I wanted to happen in here, and in that regard, we moved all of the voltage regulators out of this. They're now down in the outboard power supply, so that there is nothing in here.
Yeah, it's right here.
There is nothing in the tape transport except a wire going to a motor or a board to control the tape path. That's it. So that was its total goal. And in addition to that, we have suspended it in a rack system. And I'll get into the rack system in a minute. But what the goal was here was to separate church and state. Move the tape, the playback of the tape, and the power to everything down in the outboard power supply.
Okay, great. How about the outboard power supply? Tell us more about that.
The outboard power supply was designed to keep the power completely away from the playback. And in here we have a thick aluminum chassis built specifically for United Home Audio. Inside it has a thick layer of rich light, which is vibration dampening material. All of the toroidal power transformers are bolted to it. Every board is on it. In the outboard power supply we have 3 transformers. We have one for the tape transport, we have one for the right channel, and one for the left channel. So we have complete separation of church and state. In addition to that, the Super Deck uses a 3-stage power delivery system. In other words, it takes the power from the wall, steps it down 3 different times to the desired voltage for the outboard head amp. And that gives you a complete decoupling from the wall, which was the goal. So this is really overbuilt, it's overpowered, and yet it has the ease and finesse of delivery of that power that I think is quite extraordinary, and it comes through in the playback.
Well, that's what it's about. Quiet, blacker backgrounds,
Yep.
removing the power, transformers from the main body of the deck down here, and also for the right and left channel playback.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's also umbilical cords that are
Mhm.
supplied with the deck. There's
Mhm.
one that goes from the outboard head amp to the tape transport,
Mhm.
and then also one that feeds the outboard head amp.
Well, tell us about the head amp.
The head amp is a special deal. It's made out of it uses the same chassis, so it's thick billet aluminum chassis. It's lined with Rich Life. The connector plates are totally isolated from the cabinet. In other words, where the input comes in is completely isolated with an interesting new product. Same thing with the outputs. It has XLR outputs or RCA outputs, and that panel also has vibration dampening between where the connectors connect and the rest of the chassis. This is a completely dual mono system, and each and every single gain stage and the EQ stage all have their own individual DC power delivery devices, and these are unlimited in power. And it comes through when you're hitting the transients on a tune or kicking out those lower bass notes. You really hear that it's fully fleshed out. And the reason is because they don't want for power. That was the thing that I was most concerned about. I wanted to make sure everything was overdone so that when you needed it, you have it. The way that this works is there's an output on the tape transport, and it uses an XLR output to an XLR input on the top of the head amp. And yes, you can use different cables. I supply a cable, which is a very nice cable. It uses the Furtec carbon fiber XLRs and the whole bit. It sounds very nice, and it's provided with the deck. But of course, you can go up the food chain as far as you want.
Well, we're using here today a synergistic research.
I worked
Yep.
with Andy at Synergistic Research because I've tried a number of different XLR cables between the tape transport and the head amp, and what I noticed was a bigger, fatter cable was not the way to go. Normally you would think, oh yeah, more wire, it's going to sound better. Nah, because the reason is the signal coming off the tape head is very low, like a low output moving cartridge, for example.
Yeah.
So really what you want is a tone arm cable. So I talked Andy into building me a half-meter XLR Galileo SX tone arm cable. Actually, 2 of them. One, you have one for the right, one for the left. He also put on there the ability to put tuning bullets and also the ability to connect to a ground system like Synergistic's active ground block, for example, which I use. And so we connected it up. Peter and I connected it up last night, started listening to it, realized it's not broken in, but thought, it seems like it's bringing something interesting to the table. So chances are we'll work something out with Synergistic to be able to offer an upgrade on that.
That's a nifty thing.
Yeah. And you know, you feel free to experiment because it's simply a connection. You
Yeah.
can get your own XLR tone-on cable and give it a shot based on your preference for the rest of the cables in your system, for example. But this thing puts out a pretty good gain, a pretty good level of gain. It's also, these boxes are also completely grounded. In other words, they are taped off, the edges are all taped off before they're painted, so that we can have a completely conductive box that will offer a chassis, a really good chassis ground. The outboard head amp and the outboard power supply are both painted in Cerakote, which they use on high-end guns and what have you because of its resilience. And it's just a slick finish. It's a very slick finish. It's a very thin finish, but very durable. And it worked out great because it was easy to mask off and get the complete chassis ground. In addition to that, on the back of the outboard head amp, there is a universal ground where you can ground all of there's an outboard ground on the outboard power supply and on the head amp and on the tape transport. So by going to one of these ground points, either on the back of the outboard power supply or in back of the head amp, you get a complete star ground for the system. And that allows me, for example, to connect that to my earth ground, which I spent a lot of money in this house developing, and it just sucks the noise out of the system, basically is what happens. So we've pretty much thought through every aspect of playback. Big VU meters, glowing blue for you you guys that like the Macintosh or just like big VU meters. We put big VU meters on it. You can also, there's a knob on the front, and you can also turn off the lights, and you can also turn off the VU meters. Well, why would you want to turn off your VU meters? Why would you want to turn on off the lights? You can hear it. You can hear it. You can hear the lights, and you can hear the motion of the VU meters because what they're doing is they're bouncing on the signal. And if you stop the bouncing on the signal, you get a benefit. So that's why we have this option for your...
Very cool. I see you both have RCA and XLR outputs.
Yeah.
Is this a fully differential
Yes, it is.
unit? So you're going to get a little bit more gain. You're going to get 6 dB more gain from your XLR output.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
Now for the outputs, we've used the next gen RCAs, and of course we use the Furtec XLR chassis mounts. We also use a Furtec inlet, 15 amp IEC inlet, their best one, on the outboard power supply. So the goal was both of the outputs on the tape transport and the input, they're also Furtec, they're high-end XLR chassis mounts. So anything that we could think of that might enhance the sound has been done inside of this thing. It sounds very effortless, and it sounds like there's more there.
That's it. That's what we said last night. It's more there. And it's housed in this beautiful structure here. What do we call this structure?
The rack system.
The rack system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically what I wanted to do was I didn't want a customer to have to employ 3 shelves in their rack system to play a super deck. So what I decided to do was build a rack system that would support the tape transport, and in addition would have a place where I could put the outboard head amp right on the top of the rack, because the tape transport is going to be on the top of the rack anyway. So then all you have are 2 rack spaces, a top rack space and then a rack space for the outboard head amp. That was the goal. In addition to that, while designing this thing, I wanted to make sure it was made out of thick enough aluminum to be quite robust, and that's what we did. The rack system is like, it's
super sturdy.
It's super sturdy.
Yeah.
But also it incorporates a gel system that allows the tape transport to float in a gel system. So it's floating free of vibrations from the rack or anything else that might be near it, and definitely from speakers,
Yeah, from the
airborne.
woofers. Yeah, airborne.
Yeah, airborne. So that was the goal, and it works really well. It's easy to put in. There's basically 2 bolts at the top here, a plate that comes off, and you take the tape transport, sit it in there, lean it back, put the bar back on the top, screw it on, and you're done. It is not coming out of there,
No, that's great.
and is suspended in the air.
Well, I think the look of it too. I mean, the pride of ownership for owners, and just to look at it's off the charts. It's stunning. I mean, the design eye for it, with the tilted back, with the structure of it, with the structured hole or spaces in the side of the deck. It's of the platform. It's just stunning to look at.
And we use some really nice large Allen bolts that hold it all together that kind of, enhance the look. And
They do,
whatnot.
yeah, they do.
Then the other feature of the rack was that I realized that, okay, if I'm going to suspend the tape transport in a gel system, why don't I make the outboard head amp and the outboard power supply also float? So I found these footers made by Hi-Fi Stay, and they were designed specifically for the weight of these 2 units. And they suspend there's 4 of them. What we did was we machined wells into the base of the rack and the bottom of the head amp and the bottom of the outboard power supply to the exact measurements of these Hi-Fi Stay footers. So they click into place. They're not in there randomly. They're in there where I want them to be because of the vibration characteristics that we measured on each of the cases. So they're right where I want them to be, so it's dummy proof. When you slide the outboard head amp into the rack, you slide it in on a towel, then you lift it up, put in 1 footer in the back, 2 footers in the back, 2 in the front, pull the towel out, and you're suspended in 3D.
Well, it's very, very, very cool. Very cool. Everything I can see has been thought out. Every aspect of this playback, for tape playback, it's a masterpiece. It is simply a stunning masterpiece. Well, Greg, my favorite part of the review is the listening session.
Yeah.
So we've got some Jimmy Page. We're going to play next. You've heard this track before. We played it up at listening to the Walnut Room at AV Showrooms earlier this year for a review. So compare and contrast that to the listening session we're going to have here. Different speakers. This system consists, again, MBL 101 Mark IIs. What model amplifiers are these?
9008 monoblocks.
Okay, and then
a 6010 preamp.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also using Synergistic Research Power Cell SE, 12 SE, and we're also using the all Synergistic Research cables and the active ground block SE. And for power, I also have a complete IsoClean 0 ohm power panel that's being fed 100 amps, and that's basically what's coming over here to run this system, 100 amps. And I talked about the grounding system. I actually had 3 6-foot by 1-inch copper rods put out on the wet side of the house that is the ground for this system, so we're pretty isolated.
Wow. Well, super impressed. Arguably the best analog in the world, sitting right here next to Greg and in front of me. And let's do it. Let's play some Jimmy Page. Okay?
All right, sounds good.
Okay, here we go.
life a I don't think that's right. Yeah, but you know I did what I could. Yeah. Said, oh, I love you, baby. Oh, I love you, baby. Oh, I love you, baby. Oh, I love you. Baby, since I've been loving you, yeah, I'm about to lose my wordplay. Everybody trying to tell me, ooh, that you didn't mean me no good, no. But I tried, I tried, I tried, I tried. Trying to do the best I could. I've been working, I've been working, I've been working. Oh, baby, 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 baby. So every night. Yesterday, 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 yesterday. You know, I know, I need to get out. Baby, since I'm over you, oh, I'm gonna lose it.
Whoa! Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. My goodness gracious. Live, the quarter, right here in our room. There's so much image density, so much information. I heard far more information on the super deck than we have on the standard deck up at AV Showroom's listening studio, Walnut Room. It is, the guitar was so distinct and effortless in its place here. And I heard so much more in the mix. I heard those violins in the mix. I never really noticed that before. And they just were just there. And it's just it's a wall of sound coming out at you. Man, it's just, I don't know what to say. We also played, this is from last night's listening session. We are playing Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Spinning Wheel. Oh my goodness gracious, the impact, what goes up must come down. And the horns coming in, it was spectacular. The horns were so dimensional. As I say quite often, layers and layers of in the mix of the different instruments and vocals. It was just an absolutely mind-bending experience. Played a couple other tracks. We played some Deep Purple, Machine Head. That was totally outrageous. I mean, my goodness gracious.
Pretty impactful.
Yeah, that was really, it just had to slam. And I think that's another thing the tape deck does better than the standard deck. I think there's more slam to it.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit more reach in the low end.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's more, there's more, there, and there's more foundation. More foundation to it. So over the course of the past several weeks with you in the system, how do you say back and forth between the decks? Where do you see the advantages of the Super Deck?
The Super Deck does have a tighter control on the bass. It's got a more robust top to bottom sound stage and left to right sound stage. But then within that sound stage, even though things might be coming from way off to the right of the speaker, way off in the distance, it's still completely fleshed out, and it sounds absolutely realistic by being there. And one of the tunes that we listened to last night was Black Sabbath's Fairies Wear Boots.
Oh, that was so cool.
And Peter was going nuts, air guitaring and the whole thing. And you know, for this video, I'm sure a lot of people see this video, I'd like to make a personal offer to Ozzy Osbourne to come and hear your music like you never heard it before. How about that?
Well, summing up, the fit and finish is spectacular. It is the skeletal design of the bracket platform is stunning to behold. You can just tell the weight of it. What is the approximate weight of the whole upper?
Well, the rack system is weighing in at about 65 pounds, and the outboard head amp weighs in about 75. The power supply is at 90 pounds. And you can still move it around, you know, with one person. It's not a real problem. Unlike some audio equipment that's super heavy. So this can be managed by one person, you know, versus a studio deck, let's say, that you have to have, you know, 3 people to move. But, you know, I've said this so many times and we really didn't talk about it, but reliability is the stronghold for UHA decks. Put it this way, if you buy an old studio deck that's from 1960s, 1970s, it's like buying a 1960 or 70-year-old car. And then what you want to do is you want to run Formula One in it, okay? So you're out there on the Formula One track in your 57 Chevy, and people are passing you like you're standing still. Well, with this, all we want to do up here on the tape transports past the tape, very efficient, very reliable, all DC motors, don't have any trouble. The outboard head amp is bulletproof. We had a power outage the other day. The power went down, power came back on 2 or 3 times as they bump a lot of times in the summertime. I came flying downstairs to see what's going on. Nothing's going on. This is still working, even though power went out, power came back on, surges, gosh knows what. Doesn't make any difference. Bulletproof.
Well, sonically, there are no peers, viewers. This was the best sounding tape deck, the standard model, and now this. I mean, it just gives you more of everything. So you're getting a wider, bigger sound stage. You're getting quieter backgrounds. You're getting holographic imaging that is so realistic. You're there. You're there with the musicians. Greg, it's a work of art. Viewers, you have to check the Super Deck out. So again, we're proud of the world premiere here in video of the United Home Audio Super Deck, designed by Greg Barone, United Home Audio, Peter Berninger reporting for AV Showrooms. Thank you very much, Greg, for having us in.
Thanks, Peter, for coming. Appreciate it.
Hey, see you, viewers. Bye. Thanks for watching.